started a short
Okay.
demo, so.
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna be looking at Drypoint. So Drypoint, it's not relief printing. It's part of a group of printmaking called Intaglio. So Intaglio, Intaglio, which means to incise in Latin. So it's sort of the opposite of relief printing. With relief printing, you carve away anything you don't want to print. With Drypoint, whatever you scratch or dig into the plate will be inked up and printed. So it's closer to drawing in that way. So all these black lines here, for example, the whites weren't carved out, because that'd be a lot of fine carving. The blacks were scratched into the plate. So it's kind of the opposite.
Which is a lot easier for me to understand.
So, and with Drypoint, you have to use line. You have to think of different ways to use line. So think in terms of pattern, cross-hatching, grouping lines closer together to create darks, put the lines further apart to create lights. It's kind of like drawing with a ballpoint pen in a way. You can also control the darkness and lightness of your lines by how hard you press into the metal or your plate. So the harder you press, the deeper the line's going to be, the more ink it's going to hold, and then vice versa. So if your line's very light, you'll get a very light line. So you can get a range.
So the backgrounds of those, are they like light lines, or is that just the ink on the plate?
This gray here?
Yeah.
So that's called plate tone. So it's a characteristic of this type of printmaking.
Okay.
So metal has kind of a grain, and it will hold a certain amount of ink. And that's called plate tone. So aluminum tends to hold more. Things like copper holds less. You can polish the metal and make it less, or you can sand it and have more of a plate tone if you want. But this characteristic. So, there's different materials you can use for your printing plate. So I tend not to use the word block. When we move into Intaglio, we call them plates. Printing surface. So we're going to use little pieces of aluminum. That's what we use at the university. I might have some copper kicking around, I'll check. But traditionally copper's been used. It's a really nice metal to work with. It's also pretty expensive. Aluminum's cheaper. You can even use things like plexiglass. You can scratch into plexiglass. That would work too. Like a piece of plexi. You get it printed. I've got these little pieces here. So to create our image, we have to use a scribe or an etching needle. So this is the double twisted etching scribe that we use at the university. So it has two ends. It's twisted in the middle. I like to put tape around the end that I'm using just to hold it a little bit easier. Some people use cork. It just makes it easier to hold. So it's steel. It's very hard. I think Hues sells these.
Yeah, we use. Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah.
In that little white box.
So it's hardened steel, so it'll scratch into soft metal like aluminum or copper quite easily, or plexi. I also have these homemade scribes as well, so anything that has a point that's pretty hard can be used. I've seen people use nails, screws. You go to the Princess Auto and you get an auto scribe, like a mechanics scribe. For they used to mark metal when they're cutting it or working with metal. That works too. So anything you can use to scratch into the metal would work. These small pieces of metal, they have one side's covered in plastic. You can peel that off, and you get a nice smooth side to work on.
So that's
That's the side we're
skirt,
working on.
this.
Yep. That's not always the case, but the metal that we get always has one side that's covered with plastic to protect it. Good to get from our suppliers. And then if you want to, I mean, you could kind of draw it out with a pencil. You could use that Conte transfer paper. So if you want to do a drawing first and then transfer it onto your plate, you can. Again, whatever we scratch into will be the dark lines that we want up and print. But just like relief printing, when you print it, your image is going to be a mirror of what's on the plate. So it's going to flip. And once you get your drawing, or if you want to freehand it, when you're ready, you can scratch into your plate. Some people hate the noise of metal on metal. I've had a few students cringe. There's not much you can do.
As a kid, I think that's going to push right over the edge.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big nails.
It's not, it's not like fingernails. This is,
Blackboard.
this is pretty
It's not bad.
benign.
And yeah, it's very much like drawing. See that? I might pass it around. You can feel the plate. So again, the deeper the lines are, the more ink it's going to hold. The lighter the line, the less ink it's going to hold.
Thank you.
So with Drypoint, it has a kind of characteristic fuzzy line. Just because the Drypoint, when you work with Drypoint, you scratch into the metal, you're not actually removing that much of the metal. What you're doing is you're forcing the metal to push out on either side of the line, and it creates a burr, so it creates kind of a rough line. Something like an engraving or etching, where you use acid to pick lines, will give you a cleaner line. Also with Drypoint, because it's a dry process, because you're working directly onto the plate, you can only pull so many impressions before the plate starts wearing out. You have to use more pressure to get a print. So you get fewer prints in addition. So it really depends on your plate. If you have a lot of delicate fine lines, you might just get 5 before it starts wearing out. You might have to go back and touch it up if you want to do the larger edition, but it will wear out pretty fast compared to something like etching or engraving or lino cut or wood cut, so you get a smaller edition. All right, so in terms of paper, we use cotton rag paper, and the paper we want to dampen, so we want to wet the paper. It's kind of like what we did for chine filet. So I'm just going to spritz my paper on both sides, cover it up with some plastic. Let it sit for a few minutes. The reason why we dampen our paper is to make the paper softer. So it squeezes into those grooves that we made and you get a better impression. That's the idea. So it makes the paper more soft or more flexible. And it allows the paper to really squish into those little lines that we've scratched into our plate. So for printing, we have a few options. You can print a Drypoint by hand. The quality is pretty good. It's not quite the same as a press. When we go to the university, I'll show you the big presses that we use. You can try the Woodzilla, it works pretty good. Like I said, something like a spoon would be okay. Jan was nice enough to bring this. So this is a mini press that's 3D printed.
Oh.
Yeah. So the people who make this, they're called Open Press. So I think they're two German artists, and they wanted to make printmaking more accessible to everyone, because to buy an etching press is quite expensive. So they started 3D printing these little presses. So Open Press Project is what they're called. And I think they come in different sizes. This is bigger than the one I used to have. And it has a metal top roller. It's quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Is the black part metal too?
No, plastic. These presses are adjustable, so they have these two little screws up top, so you can lower and raise the roller. So it'd be possible if you raised it high enough, you could do a little lino cut. It does come with a clamp. This table is a little bit too thick, but that's okay, I'll just hold it down. But it's nice if you can have it held in one spot while you print. This means there's a top roller and a bottom roller, and a little handle, and then you basically have this press bed that you feed through here. And people. And on their website for the Open Press Project, they often do mini print exchanges. So they encourage people to buy their presses, and then they do little tiny print exchanges, which is adorable and fun. And nice too, because it's international, so I mean the prints are so small that to mail it off or get a courier, it's really not that much. It's a nice idea. So now inking is going to be a little bit different, a lot different. We're not going to use rollers, we're going to wipe into the plate. So it takes a little bit more, just, let's see, it's going to put here. So we're going to use ink that's made for intaglio. I have an ink made by Charbonnel, the company is named Charbonnel. It's a water-soluble oil-based ink, so it's very similar to what we used for relief printing. And Speedball makes this ink called Akua. It used to be a separate company, but then Speedball bought them out. And the idea is the same. It's an oil-based ink, I think it's soy-based, that washes the soap and water. You can get oil-based etching inks as well, but this is nice because it cleans easier. So I've got black, I've got blue, and I've got green. I'll try the blue today. So we're not going to roll on the ink. What we're going to use is little pieces of mat board, basically little pieces of black cardboard. We're going to dip the card into your ink like this, and then we're going to card it onto the plate. So what you're doing is you're forcing the ink into those grooves that we made. So all I can do is put a piece of newsprint down underneath so I can move it around. We're going to wipe the plate. So traditionally, something called tarlatan has been used. So tarlatan, T-A-R-A-L-A-N, tarlatan. There's a T there. Basically, it's cheesecloth with starch in it.
Mhm.
So this is specifically made for this kind of printing, so you get from an art store. It's kind of expensive for what it is. Some people use tulle, you know, the stuff they use for wedding dresses, and it actually works quite well. You can almost get away with just using newsprint, depending on your image. In Japan, they use actually pieces of silk to wipe. It's quite lovely. But, so tarlatan and newsprint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe the surface of the plate. So I'm removing the ink that's on the surface still. So any kind of smudges or excess ink that's on the surface, I'm going to wipe away. And then keep the ink in the lines or grooves that I've made. So it's a little bit, I find that it's a little bit of a longer process than inking up a lino, although the plates are quite small, so it shouldn't be too bad. And I'd say with this kind of ink, you can get away with just newsprint. You can overwipe or underwipe your plate, so you can wipe off too much ink and you'll start wiping the ink out of the grooves, and then your image will be kind of light. You can also underwipe where you got too much ink, and then the negative or non-image area will be kind of smudgy and won't look very clean. So you have to get it just right. Usually I find that when I'm finished wiping with my newsprint, I still have a little bit of ink coming off my newsprint. So it might be just a tiny, tiny little bit. That's good. If your newsprint's completely clean, you probably overwiped. Big rule of thumb. You can try the tarlatan. The tarlatan removes a lot of ink all at once. For plates this size, it might just be overkill. You might be overwiping. So, but you're welcome to try the tarlatan if you like. But I think the newsprint's probably enough for this size of plate and for the type of ink that we're using. The type of ink we're using is quite loose, so it wipes pretty easily. And then if you want, you can take a shop towel or a cloth and clean up your edges so you have nice clean edges. And then we're ready to print. So for a paper, it's been soaking for a few minutes. Just like Shen clay, we want it damp but not soaking wet. So we don't want to take this and throw it on top of the plate and run it through the press. We want to take some newsprint and blot it or remove some of the excess water. So there should be no shiny spots when we're finished. I'll load up the press and see if it works. So I'm going to put a piece of newsprint down on the press bed just to keep it clean. You can also use a tiny little piece of mylar. Then your paper goes on top, so plate face up, paper on top, and then this piece of felt. This will help deliver pressure onto the paper and the plate.
The paper's cotton, right?
Yeah, cotton rag. You can also use washi if you wanted to.
Okay.
print.
Mhm.
So is it quite tight, like you are adjusting
Mhm.
the
The pressure.
height of the,
Yep.
yeah, so is it quite tight?
It's quite
Yeah.
tight, yeah. It is a little bit easier to work with the clamp down.
Mhm.
I think this is an improved model. The one I had was a little finicky. This one's quite nice. So the paper's still damp, so when it dries, the paper will be all wrinkly. They're quite small, so I don't know if stretching them might not be an option, but you can even put them between some newsprint and then put some weight on them. Let them dry, so they dry flat.
What did you use for paper there? Was it just a cotton rag?
Cotton rag, yeah.
Yeah.
This one is harsh. Yeah, I wouldn't use cardstock like that Lynx,
No.
because you have to soak your paper. Lynx paper, cardstock paper has a lot of sizing in it, a lot of glue, and when you wet it, the glue releases and actually gets onto the felt. And over time, if you get enough people using the felt, the sizing gets into the felt and stiffens it, and it's really hard to get out.
Mm.
Yeah. At the university, we used to get students to print on cardstock because it was cheaper,
Yeah.
but then all the felt's really strong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to buy new felt.
You have to buy a new felt every time. So instead, we get them to work smaller but with better paper. We'll have to compromise between price and quality. And then if you want to print another one, you just add more ink. You don't have to clean your plate. Just add more ink, wipe, and then repeat. And then when you're finished printing, then you can wash it out. And with this type of ink, just soap and water. And rinse it and you're good.
So, oil-based too?
It's a water-soluble oil-based ink. Traditionally, you can't get like a straight oil-based ink. That's what I like to use myself.
But not the Crownfield.
I'm gonna try the Cranfield. I think it might be a little too
A little too
stiff.
stiff,
Yeah. Usually, etching ink tends to be a bit looser, just so it's easier to wipe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Drypoint.